Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Big Nickel IDP Podcast. I am your host, Jon Macri, fantasy analyst at PFF, and I am here with you today for the last time before the regular season. With the offseason reaching its finale, that means it's also Big Nickel season finale time. We've done a ton of talking and projecting for the regular season. We've covered hundreds of IDPs along the way. We shared plenty of thoughts, shared plenty of laughs, shed some tears when Ivan Pace went undrafted, rejoiced when it was clear that we were right and the NFL was wrong. And now we wrap it all up with the Godfather of IDP to talk about some of our favorite IDPs for 2023. So for one last time, let's get it. All right, it is my guys' time where we talk about our favorite IDPs for the 2023 season. And speaking of favorites, one of my favorites is here to go through this exercise with me once again for the third straight year. He is a writer at Bleacher Report, The Athletic, Football Diehards, Football Guys, NBC Sports Edge, and Fantasy Sharks. And I'm probably even leaving some out. He is the godfather of IDP, Mr. Gary Davenport. Gary, thank you for being here. And I'm sorry if I missed anything at the top there.
Oh, I forget them sometimes when people ask where all I work, so don't feel bad at all. Pleasure to be here. And you know what? At least we made it through this offseason without a Blake Martinez incident.
Yeah.
We didn't have like a top 10 guy just suddenly get cut a week before the season starts and just leave all of us like, what just happened? So we got through at least we managed that. So I feel like we're going into 2023 with positive momentum.
That's right. That's right. And now that you've said that, there's a very good chance that this weekend somebody is going to up and retire. Because I'm pretty sure, I think it was last year, there was somebody we talked about and we ended up jinxing. It might have been Blake Martinez too. I can't remember who it was, but we jinxed somebody last year where something happened. But it has been nice that for the most part we've been pretty safe this year. At least, no crazy like injuries IDP wise. We survived the preseason without losing like a lot of our key stars. I know, Shaquille Leonard's dealing with something, but Chase Young's still coming back. But these are not injuries that are expected to be season ending. So that's been kind of nice. So always good to get through the preseason and get into week one with everybody mostly healthy for sure.
Well, and Shaquille Leonard's always dealing with something. So
yeah,
what are you going to do?
Yeah, that's how you know it's week one coming around the corners, because guys like Shaquille Leonard is dealing with an injury. Jamal Adams is still dealing with an injury, things like that. So there's no better sign that football season is about to start than some of those guys reminding us why they are a pain to own for IDP. So we're going to talk about more of like our favorite guys for this episode, at least. And I'm excited for this one because we do just get to be kind of positive about our favorite IDPs before the season. Might be like maybe our last bit of predominantly positive content that we get to do, because we know the regular season can be pretty soul crushing at times. So we'll enjoy this while we can. We each have a few players who we either typically target in drafts or have ranked higher than consensus. However we want to claim them as my guys works for me. So without further ado, let's get into it. And we'll start things off with one of your guys, Gary. Who do you have at the edge position?
You know what? And I've been a big supporter of the guy all summer long. John Norton at Football Guys when he sniped me at the Kings Classic Butkus Division Draft. Not only did he snipe me, but we're there live, Pro Football Hall of Fame, all sitting around a U-shaped table. He just shoots me this evil smirk.
Wow.
As he's yanking my guy out from under me.
That's
I haven't forgotten it, and I will now. I will have my vengeance one day. That's Matt Judon of the New England Patriots. 60 tackles each of the last 2 years, at least a dozen or 12 and a half sacks, I believe, each of the last 2 years. I think he had 15 and a half last year. He was top 20 in QB hits and hurries. And the best thing about him is he's got DL1 upside, but he's usually going to be available in DL2 territory. It's not unusual for him to drop outside the top 15. And he's one of those guys, I think, that with true position taken over and the 3-4 edge rushers joining the 4-3 defensive ends as quote-unquote defensive linemen, that added depth has led to some guys kind of flying under the radar. And I think Judon's a great example of that.
Yeah, he really is actually a really good example because he's done nothing but be an elite IDP since heading to the Patriots, which is not something many defensive players can say when it comes to Bill Belichick's defense either. So, Bill has leaned on him pretty hard. Like he's played a minimum of 850 defensive snaps in each of the past 2 seasons, had a 70+ pass rush grade each year, at least 63 pressures per year. Like you said, he hit those double-digit sacks each year as well. I think as long as he maintains those strong pass rush metrics and playing time, he's a great bet to repeat that production from these past 2 seasons. And yeah, I'm glad to see like people aren't like overvaluing his sack numbers from last year, which is smart, but he's still like a nice, safe, like high volume, good pass rusher to target as your edge too, like you said, a lot of the time. So I'm definitely into it. I like where he's priced right now. I feel like that's about right. And I'm very happy to get him if I can get him as my defensive end too, for sure. My first guy here. So I went with Josh Allen of the Jacksonville Jaguars. So he comes in actually as my edge 9 on the season. Not somebody that you actually have to draft inside the top 10 edge defenders right now, but he's absolutely one of my favorites, like as one of the best bets, I think, to finish inside that range, in my opinion. And he was my dark horse to kind of become edge 1 overall this year. The thing that has Allen's like his ADP pushed down, I think, has to be that he's only had 1 season with 1 season out of 4 with double-digit sacks. So people continue to kind of overvalue past years' sack totals as though they're stable year to year, but as we know, they're far from stable. So the actual stable metrics that typically create those sacks and opportunities for sacks are what we should be looking for. And Allen checks all the boxes in that regard. So last year, he set a new career high in pass rush grade with a 79.4. He set a high win rate, 14.6, and pressure rate at 14.8, but only delivered the 6 sacks on the season. So the other positive for Allen is that he's playing on this defensive line that doesn't have any options that should push him or Trayvon Walker for playing time. So his playing time has actually increased every year that he's been in the league, recently playing 77% of the team's defensive snaps. I think being on the field so much, he's been able to post strong tackle numbers every year as well. He totaled 129 total tackles over the past 2 seasons combined, which is inside the top 5 at his position. He's got a history of strong and improving pass rush metrics, ranked inside the top 20 in the NFL in QB hits last season. Elite tackle production, no concerns about playing time. I've talked about guys that are in for positive regression in the sack column before. Max Crosby, obviously, being the biggest one from last year working out. Jalen Phillips has been the other big name this offseason. And Josh Allen is right there with Phillips when looking at the sacks versus expected totals, just to be at like maybe a slightly lesser extent, but another year could push him either way. And there's a chance that he at least could be this year's Max Crosby, even though there isn't really a true 2023 Max Crosby because nobody gets that level of playing time. But Josh Allen has nearly as good a chance as Jalen Phillips in that regard. And we can draft him much, much cheaper right now, since most people are kind of on to Phillips by now.
Just had to bring Max Crosby up after you beat us all to death with him in the IDP Championship of the Universe, didn't
you? Yeah, that was one for me. I think I got him in the 5th round in that.
You had the best team in that league from the beginning to the end.
Yeah,
and it's kind of rare that you see that happen, that the actual best team in a league actually winds up winning the championship. But yeah, you took it to me in the championship game, if I remember right.
I was worried that I was going to go like the Patriots route and go undefeated and lose in the finals, to be honest, but I'm glad it worked out.
I'm with you on Allen. The talent's there. Like you said, the pass rush metrics are there. He's due for a year where some of those pressures and some of those hurries convert into sacks. I've seen some drafts where he drops quite a bit, and I've seen others where there are gentlemen such as yourself who are like, no, I want to get a piece of Josh Allen this season. So I've seen him bounce around quite a bit so far as where he's being drafted.
Yeah, for sure. He's been kind of all over the place, and typically somebody that I can get later. But you're right. There's absolutely drafts that are maybe a little bit sharper, and they're on to these kind of things. And he does tend to go a little bit sooner. But yeah, just somebody that I've been scooping up a lot of in drafts this year. But um, tell us about another one of your guys here on the edge.
Okay, going to go with a veteran face in a new place with Za'Darius Smith of the Cleveland Browns. Had at least 44 tackles and double-digit sacks in his last 3 healthy seasons. He did have a lost season with the neck injury, but in his last 3 healthy years, productive all 3 seasons, including last year. He was 11th in pass rush win rate last year. And I mean, he's playing opposite Myles Garrett, so it's not like he's going to be double teamed ever. Again, it's kind of like the same with Judon. I tend, even now, especially with the increased depth on the edge, I favor linebackers early in drafts. I'm not going to lie. I like to load up on linebackers because in most leagues, they're, the foundation for your team. They're going to be the most consistent guys. And at a lot of most tackle, especially tackle heavy formats, they're going to be your highest scoring guys. So I find myself looking a lot for, okay, who's a guy I can get in the, 14 to 18 range who I think has a legitimate shot at cracking the top 10. And I think Za'Darius Smith could do that this year.
Yeah, I'm like right on par with you because I have him as edge 14. So I love Za'Darius this year. He was like on my like honorable mentions list here for my guys. I'll throw them out rapid fire at the end there. But easily one of my favorite signings of the offseason as well. I think just an underrated player that the Browns were able to scoop up there. And what's crazy about Smith, he basically like he didn't play almost at all in 2021 because of that back injury. He was essentially written off, goes to the Vikings, and then plays some of the best football of his career. He was unreal last year. He had an 84.7 pass rush grade, 78 pressures, hit double-digit sacks, like you said, for the 3rd time in 4 years, really 3 seasons in a row because I'm not counting 2021. But I think he gives the Browns like a real chance to have 2 double-digit sack players in a season for the first time in maybe forever. It hasn't happened since Myles Garrett was drafted. I haven't seen it in like the last maybe 20 years. I don't know. You tell me, has this ever happened in Cleveland where there's been 2 players to get double-digit sacks?
I can't think of a year that it happened. And I mean, I've been a Browns fan for a long time.
Yeah.
And, it's just, he's easily the best. All due respect to Javion Clowney, Smith is the best pass rusher that Garrett has played across from. And when you've got those 2 excellent edge guys, it just gives the opposing offenses fits because what are you going to do? You can't double them both. And if you're going to double one guy, it's going to be Garrett. So Smith, I mean, he's getting those win rates a lot of times against double teams last year. What's he going to do when he's being single blocked all the time? He's going to eat. That's what he's going to do.
Yeah. I'm excited to see what their defensive line looks like this year. I even really like Dalvin Tomlinson getting in there too, like giving them some help on the interior. I think we could. I really have a feeling we could see double-digit sacks from 2 guys on Cleveland for the first time, maybe ever. I don't know. We'll have to like somebody fact check that, but it's been a very long time.
Snuck in there and grabbed Shelby Harris late.
Oh yeah.
Got Okoronkwo that they can rotate in as that 3rd edge guy. Oh, I love what the Browns did. And the defensive line wasn't outside of Myles Garrett, was an area of weakness, and they did a great job addressing that in the offseason. Now, the linebackers are another story, but it's the Browns. You can't have everything. So
yeah. Yeah, I love what they did with their defensive line. I think it'll work out nicely for them. I mean, it's a tough division, but we'll see. I think they could put something together there, especially if Deshaun Watson bounces back. But we'll see what happens in Cleveland this year. Should be fun. I put another one of my guys here on the defensive line. I went with the defensive tackle. So this was one I think I'm typically surprised to see people pass on in drafts. It's Javon Hargrave of the San Francisco 49ers. So maybe it's going to a new team. I think and maybe thinking that his role is going to be different. I'm not sure why people are maybe lower on him. But I still love Hargrave this year. He's my DT2 for 2023 behind only Aaron Donald. And don't get me wrong, I love Quinnen Williams. They're super close, but you don't have to spend anywhere near the draft capital to get Hargrave that you do for Quinnen or Aaron Donald. If I look at some of the drafts that I've done this year that are DT required, looking at the IDP Invitational, I got Hargrave in the 17th round as DT9 after Quinnen went as DT1 in the 8th round. Forrest Buckner went as DT2 in that round in the 9th round. So almost 7-8 rounds later, getting Hargrave, the IDP only championship of the universe we're in together. I got him as DT7 in the 7th round. I know Aaron Donald went in the 3rd, Quinnen and Wilkins went in the 4th round as well. So somebody that I've been able to get a little bit later, but I'm very happy with. Last year, he earned the 3rd highest pass rush grade for the position, a 90.8 behind only Dexter Lawrence, who I also love, and Chris Jones, who ended up having 15 sacks. So Hargrave posted 11 sacks last year, along with 60 tackles. 10 were tackles for loss. He added 16 QB hits on top of all that. Was a really strong tackler. He posted 10 tackles over expected, which is a solid number for the position. But the main thing we're looking for outside of playing time and decent tackle floor at the DT position is high upside pass rush ability. And Hargrave has consistently been among the best in the league in that regard. He's finished in the top 3 at his position in pass rush grade in each of the past 2 years. We know the Eagles defensive line was elite, but that isn't what creates pass rush grade. It's much more on the individual player to earn those high marks. And Hargrave has done that every year. 49ers defensive line is pretty good in their own right. Hopefully Nick Bosa comes back soon, but either way, there's going to be a ton of opportunity there for Hargrave, who they paid a lot of money to this offseason. They're going to lean on him a ton. So I'm very happy going into the season with him as my DT1 when I didn't have to spend as much as I thought to get him.
Oh, absolutely. When you can get him, like you said, 6, 7, 8 rounds later than some of the bigger names, it's hard to argue. And I'm not a guy who chases the big names at defensive tackle, even in tackle required leagues. So I agree with everything you said.
Nice. Yeah. He's one of my favorites. I'm excited to see what he does this year. That should be a fun defensive line as well, as long as Nick Bosa comes back. So we'll move on.
Will.
Yeah, I think so too. I can't see him sitting out. But looking at actually, before we close out the defensive lineman here, I did mention my honorable mention. So I put Jalen Phillips. He's an honorable mention for me. Almost everyone's kind of in on him now. Za'Darius Smith was one of the other ones. I also like some of the later guys, Odafe Owe, Marcus Davenport, Kwity Paye, but also Leonard Williams and Christian Barmore on the defensive tackle side as well. So just some fun bonus names there for the people.
I threw Preston Smith in there.
Preston Smith is a good one. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't even know how many shares of Preston Smith. I know that I'm going to be able to get him late. I know that he's going to go out and put up probably between 45 and 50 tackles. He's going to give me between 7 and 9 sacks. I don't know that he's a guy I want starting every week, but when the bye weeks come around, or if your starter goes down with a minor injury and he's going to be out for a week or two, you'll be glad you have Preston Smith on your roster. And he's free. He goes late in drafts.
Yeah, that's a great call. People forget about Preston Smith, and they forgot about him last year, and he was amazing last year. He, even as an older player, everybody's talking about, Rashawn Gary and then Lucas Van Ness in Green Bay, but nobody's really paying attention to Preston Smith when he's just been a solid, reliable IDP year in and year out. So I love that call. Preston Smith is a good bonus name for sure. All right, let's go on to everybody's favorite position, the linebackers. Gary, who was your first my guy at the linebacker position?
I've been beating the drum for this guy since March, since the moment he signed with the Tennessee Titans. Azeez Al-Shaair, I love the landing spot. I love what he has shown he is capable of doing 2 years ago when he filled in for an injured Dre Greenlaw and racked up, I believe, 102 total tackles. Had a top 25 run defense grade that year. He's going to be wearing the helmet communicator for the Titans. The tackle opportunities are going to be there. If there's a problem with Azeez Al-Shaair, it's that there are a lot of people in the IDP community who love Azeez Al-Shaair this year. So it drove his price up a little bit, but still, if you can get him as a mid-range LB2, if you can get him outside the top 20, absolutely. But I don't have a problem with drafting him 17th or 18th among linebackers. I think there's a path to top 10 numbers there for him, just based on there are going to be a lot of opportunities, and there's not much. I mean, who's he competing with for tackles at linebacker? Jack Gibbons.
Right. That's it. That's literally it. Yeah, this is a great call here because you're right. He should be the clear cut LB1 in Tennessee. There's nobody on that roster pushing him for snaps. I know that LB2 role. Yeah, Jack Gibbons is there, but it's not even likely to be an every down role in that defense. So Azeez Al-Shaair, he's going to be the only full-time linebacker there. And definitely, I think there's value there to scoop up. I think that range that you're talking about, 17 to 20, around there, somewhere in tier two of linebackers is where I have him. And I think that's the right spot for him. And a lot of the times I see him kind of fall. I'm very happy to get him as my LB1, as somebody that you don't necessarily have to pay up for to get, like a Roquan or a Foye or somebody like that. So I like the Al-Shaair call here. All right, let's go to one of my linebackers here. So I went with TJ Edwards of the Chicago Bears. So another free agent signing from this offseason, going to a new team. He's easily been one of my favorite linebacker targets this season, and he was last season as well. But I'm still on the TJ Edwards train here in 2023 because I don't think he's appreciated enough for what he's accomplished as a former UDFA out of Wisconsin. Over the past 2 seasons, he's finished top 5 in tackles over expected with the Eagles, and all he's done is consistently improve his overall game. He recently earned career highs with an 84.8 overall grade and a 79.7 coverage grade. Posted 159 total tackles last season, 99 of them being solos after 130 total tackles in 2021. Consistently one of the best at being around the ball as well. He ranked 16th in first contact rate last season. Always strong tackle efficiency. He's not always, but almost always the second Bears linebacker drafted in 2023 drafts, but he is by far my favorite one to target, especially once I see Tremaine Edmunds come off the board first. I think Edmunds has a really good chance to lead the Bears team in tackles this season, and think he has some potential for maybe some positive regression in terms of overall big plays as well. So I'm putting him as my LB5 heading into 2023.
Oh, I agree with you. I think Edwards is going to outscore Edmonds. I'm not a big Tremaine Edmonds guy. I'm just not. So I would much rather, of the two, especially given their relative price tag in drafts, yeah, give me Edwards all day, every day.
Yeah, there's been a few of those drafts where, and they're rare, but there's been a few where TJ Edwards goes first. But for the most part, I'd say like 90% of the times, Tremaine Edmunds is going first. He's the more recognizable name. He got the bigger contract. He's got the first round capital. But I'm very happy to just get TJ Edwards at a better value, and I think he could be the better IDP. So
someday I would love for someone to explain to me why the Chicago Bears got rid of Roquan Smith so that they could turn around and give $18 million a season to Tremaine Edmunds, because I've had people on Twitter try to say, well, Edmunds is as good as Roquan Smith. And I'm like, no, he's really not.
It's pretty crazy, right? Like those guys I think they were both in the same draft class, right? Roquan and Tremaine Edmunds. They came out the same year together as first round picks, and yeah,
2018.
That's right. Yeah. Roquan clearly the better player. The NFL is weird. I don't know what they're doing. I mean, just look at the Indianapolis Colts right now and try to tell me what's going on there. There's just a lot of this stuff that just is puzzling every single year. So I have no idea what they're thinking there. But let's go to the Philadelphia Eagles. And no, it's not Nakobe Dean, but who is your guy here for the Eagles, Gary?
I can't believe we're talking about him. But yet here we are. It's one of those guys that just won't go away. Zach Cunningham has apparently worked his way into a 3-down role, because Philly plays a lot of 2 linebacker sets, a lot of nickel. So Cunningham's going to see snaps. Are we sure Nakobe Dean is going to be that guy? I mean, it's not a slide on Nakobe Dean. He was my number 1 off-ball linebacker prospect in that draft class. But he played, 20 defensive snaps last year? I mean, he's kind of an unknown. And if Cunningham's going to be out there, 80% of the snaps, he's a guy that we have seen produce ridiculous tackle numbers in the past. I mean, it wasn't that long ago that he led the NFL in solos and total tackles. And he's going late because I think a lot of people are still just coming to grips with the fact that Zach Cunningham is on an NFL team, much less starting for one. So I've been able to scoop him up late in a couple of late drafts, and it blows my mind. It really does. I mean, everyone thought for sure it was going to be Nicholas Morrow.
Right.
And then they started talking up Christian Ellis as he was running ahead of Morrow in camp. And then they signed Cunningham and Miles Jack. And I was like, oh, please, God, don't let it be anyone but Miles Jack. Just anyone but Miles Jack. Yeah. And he retired. And now Cunningham's starting and he's IDP relevant again. It's some of these guys just will not. They're like the Freddy Krueger of IDP. You can't kill them.
That's a great, yeah, I love that. It's a great call out, right? Because what a value he could be right now heading into the season if he can hold on to that LB2 role all year. Or like you said, if he somehow emerges as the linebacker that the Eagles trust the most. I mean, it seems like they're pretty into Nakobe Dean. I know they had him wearing the green dot in the preseason and stuff, and he's been kind of their clear guy that they've been treating with the starter mentality, giving him the rest days and everything like that during the preseason. And so we'll see. He's still obviously, like you said, young and unproven, but Zach Cunningham is super, super interesting now. And even if it's just an 80% like snap share role, like you said, he has a history of being incredibly efficient with his opportunities, and it's a good defensive scheme to potentially help with that as well. I have the Eagles defense ranked 10th in my like expected linebacker friendly defensive schemes, which is a good strong number there. So like you said, they cut Nicholas Morrow, Miles Jack retired, Christian Ellis, probably the only real competition for Cunningham, and he's never been a starter in the NFL before. So on a team that's looking to compete for a Super Bowl this year, I don't know if they'll go any other route than leaving Cunningham out there. So I think this IDP resurgence for 2023 is definitely in the cards here, and he's somebody that could potentially push for that top 12 linebacker on the year that you're getting like outside of the top 40 linebackers right now in drafts, because like you said, people can't believe that he's made an NFL team. So it's pretty crazy that Zach Cunningham is back, but we'll take it because he's a good IDP.
Absolutely. I'll take whatever I can get.
Yeah, for sure. So speaking of good IDP linebackers, I got another one here, and that is Denzel Perryman of the Houston Texans. So another guy kind of flying under the radar this season. Credit to Adam Markham as well on the IDP show, because he had Perriman as one of his flag plants for this season as well. I couldn't agree more. Last year, he played just barely over 550 defensive snaps in a defense that had him rushing the passer more than he ever has in his career. And it caused a dip in his overall efficiency on top of not playing an every down role. So I love the situation for him here in Houston, playing for DeMeco Ryans. I think he could be the most valuable IDP linebacker on this team in 2023, bringing that maybe overall veteran presence and getting back to an every down role next to Christian Harris, who I don't think people realize was actually very inefficient with his opportunities last year, Christian Harris, that is. But with Perriman, we've seen him be very efficient with his opportunities in a full-time role. As recently as 2021, he led all linebackers in tackles over expected that season with plus 34.7, and he didn't even need to play 900 snaps to get there. So if he's healthy this year, he's consistently one of the better and more effective tacklers in the league. Even last year, playing in that Patrick Graham defense that didn't suit his abilities, he was still top 10 at his position in first contact rate and tackle for loss plus no gain rate. Now he'll play in one of the most tackle-friendly defenses. They rank third in the league for DeMeco Ryans, which figures to be very zone friendly, lean into coverage schemes that yield higher tackle efficiencies for the position. Perriman could absolutely end up leading the league in tackles again if he stays healthy and holds down that every down role in 2023.
I can't argue. And, just like we all predicted back in, March or April, we're going to be talking about Denzel Perriman and Zach Cunningham just before the season starts. Those are going to be our guys. That's what's going to happen this year.
Yeah, I would have laughed. I would have laughed in somebody's face. But this is why this is another reason why I tell people, like, every year there's gonna be like surprise linebackers. So don't like get too caught up in holding on to that waiver wire guy that we picked up last year that's most likely going to lose their job, because you will find guys late in the year that emerge. And yeah, Zach Cunningham, Denzel Perriman, I think are exact examples of that. So excited to see what they can do this year. I put a few honorable mentions as well. So I have Dre Greenlaw as one of them. I know he's dealing with an injury right now. Hopefully he's back by week 1, but also Devondre Campbell, Ernest Jones, Divine Diablo, and Jamin Davis were all guys that I put on my honorable mentions list here that I like quite a bit at linebacker.
I'll throw David Long on there too, assuming if he can stay healthy. And that's the big if with David Long, is that durability has been an issue for him, but it's also caused his ADP. You can get him fairly late, and his per game productivity when he is healthy, I'll take that. I'd rather have him than Jerome Baker, even though I was a little surprised that Baker wound up wearing the green dot. But Baker's another guy too who I think might be a little undervalued this year. So either one of the Miami linebackers I think is pretty good value at this point.
Yeah, we talked about both Baker and David Long on this podcast before, like earlier in this offseason, talking about how those guys are values at this point, because nobody really knows what to expect from them this year. But I think it's going to be a more consistent defense for linebacker production than what we've been used to in Miami, with like Brian Flores' scheme there and Josh Boyer. I think, Vic Fangio coming to town, I think makes it a little bit better for linebacker production than what we've got in the past. So I like the call there with David Long and Jerome Baker potentially having a little bit of a better year as well. All right, we got safeties next. Gary, who is your first my guy at the safety position?
Well, I'm never allowed to draft a defensive back early because that's my brand, and I just can't. Even in draft, if I want to, I just can't. Yeah. I just have to. At the Buccaneers draft, I just had to sit there and wait and wait and wait. I'm like, okay, 15 are off the board. It's still too early. But one guy I really like this year, Ryan Neal of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. We saw last year in Seattle what he could be capable of when the snaps were there over a 10-week stretch as a starter in place of the aforementioned injured Jamal Adams. He was a top 10 defensive back. We've already heard Antoine Winfield say that Winfield's going to be playing more of a deep safety role, which means Neal's going to be up at the line of scrimmage. The linebackers he has to compete with tackles with are formidable, but we have seen those Tampa safeties produce. And, Neal's a guy that is probably coming off the board after 20 defensive backs are gone. And he's a guy that I absolutely think you can get DB1 upside out of.
Yeah, I like him quite a bit. I put him as like one of my breakout candidates for this season for the safety position, and somebody that I've been getting quite a bit as well. He's one of my like honorable mentions as well, funny enough. But I love Ryan Neal for 2023. You look at the Bucs defense, and they were a top 10 team in the league last season in single high coverage rates. So that allows that one safety to kind of play closer to the line of scrimmage. And like you said, Antoine Winfield figures to be the deep guy there. So Ryan Neal should get those ideal IDP alignments in 2023. And he looked good last year. He was one of our highest graded safeties on the year, filling in for Jamal Adams in Seattle last year. I think, now with him having the entire offseason as a starter, and then coming into week 1 as that starter for the Buccaneers, combined with the potential to play that primary safety near the box role, I think he should greatly outperform his strong 2022 season as well, and then hopefully provide fantasy managers like a really nice value relative to his cost in most drafts. Because like you said, he's somebody you could just wait on. Nobody's really looking for, and then we scoop him up, and he ends up being a nice value.
I was genuinely surprised when Seattle, because they tendered him as a restricted free agent, and then they turned around and signed Julian Love and rescinded the tender. And I mean, no slight against Julian Love, who had an excellent year last year, but they are, if it's not broke, don't fix it. And they already had that guy to fill in for Jamal Adams, and Ryan Neal, who knew the defense and was significantly less expensive from a salary cap standpoint. But like you said, weird things happen in the NFL. I am not a general manager, And Seattle's loss is Tampa's gain, I guess.
Yeah, yeah, not a general manager yet, but it is interesting. I thought, yeah, Ryan Neal deserved that to stay on the team and potentially push for a starting role. It maybe they're thinking like Jamal Adams is coming back, and maybe Julian Love would be a cheaper replacement, or they can maybe use him in a different kind of way than they could. Neal, I have no idea, but we don't need to think about it. He's on Tampa Bay now. And yeah, hopefully ends up being a nice IDP for us this year because he doesn't cost much at this moment. Let's go on to one of my other safety picks here. So I went with Grant Delpit of the Cleveland Browns. So I think I have him at safety 8 for this season. So Jim Schwartz's defense is what is interesting for me for Grant Delpit. I think it leads to more usage in the box than what he's had in prior years. Because when we last saw Jim Schwartz as a defensive coordinator for the 2021 Eagles, he ran one of the highest rates of single high coverages in the league. So again, allowing that one safety to play deep and the other one to kind of play closer to the box and potentially get the better IDP alignments. Juan Thornhill figures to play the deep role with the Cleveland Browns, which will hopefully allow Delpit to rotate down into prime tackle territory. He posted over 100 tackles last year, which was his first year as a starter in 2022. I think we could see him potentially push for a new career high if Schwartz continues to lean into that single high deployment. He's not someone that is, catching the eye of most IDP managers, even after posting that 100 plus tackle season last year. And you could comfortably grab him as your safety too a lot of the time. But as someone who spends almost no draft capital on safeties like you, targeting them even as your safety 1 is perfectly fine with me.
And he's not competing with with an elite cadre of linebackers for tackle opportunities either.
That's
Cleveland
for sure.
line. Oh my! It's bad when Nicholas Morrow. When the Eagles released Morrow, I'm like, should the Browns take a look at him? Maybe they should.
And they keep getting injured too, right? Because even Jacob Phillips 2 years in a row with a torn pec is brutal. And then Judon Kunazik, I don't know how to say his last name, but he got hurt as well. But he was somebody that looked like was maybe going to get into the rotation. Anthony Walker and Sione Takitaki, we haven't seen this preseason because they've been dealing with injuries. So I just hope JOK ends up being an every down player, but I still like him. I just don't know if they trust him to be an every down player in the NFL. So
I loved him coming out of college, and my love has gone unrequited.
I know. It's I think there was a lot of us who like JOK, and it just hasn't worked out to this point. And I've taken a few cheap shots on him, like in Dynasty, just to add to just to get him onto the roster for next to nothing and hope that he works out. But we'll see. I don't feel that optimistic.
I'm taking a few cheap shots at him while watching Brown games.
Nice. Oh man. All right, let's finish it off here. We each got a safety left. Who is your last safety on the My Guys list?
Every year there's got to be that guy that no one expects to become an IDP relevant safety who rises from nowhere. And, halfway in October, we're like, wait, he's ranked 4th? Last year it was, now there were some people calling for Talanoa Hufanga to have a good year last year.
Mm-hmm.
I know, I was one of them. But like Jonathan Owens a month into the season, none of us, no one was like, oh, look out for Jonathan Owens this season. It didn't happen. So I'm going to go deep. I'm going to go dart throw. I'm going to go Tony Adams of the New York Jets.
Nice.
Jets signed Chuck Clark. He's going to be the guy. Chuck Clark tears his ACL. Jets turn around like the next day, bring in Adrian Amos, veteran safety, I think 122 career starts. He's going to be the guy. Only he got beat out by a second-year undrafted free agent in Adams. He was 11th in run defense grade in limited action left. Granted, very few snaps, but he played the run well. And the Jets coaching staff appears to have all kind of, they're starting him over a capable veteran safety in Adrian Amos. And every year there's going to be one of those surprise defensive backs. And Adams is free. I picked him up off the waiver wire in a couple leagues where I ran into some preseason defensive back trouble. Even in I've got a couple deep IDP drafts this weekend. I don't know if he'll be drafted in either one of them, to be honest. Yeah. So, I mean, he's free. So what do you got to lose?
That's exactly it, and you're right. I love the comparison too, because Jonathan Owens was the exact example that I was kind of thinking of as well with this guy, right? Because he's one that's kind of flown under the radar a little bit. I wrote about him in my like preseason week 3 takeaways article, but I think people were expecting maybe, you know, Adrian Amos or Ashton Davis to get a starting role next to Jordan Whitehead after the Chuck Clark injury, but nope. Tony freaking Adams, he's making the week 0 waiver wire list here. Like you said, UDFA out of Illinois in 2022, only played in 2 full games last year in week 17 and 18, but he was productive. He had 6 tackles in each of those games. Not bad. Jets, you know, they're not necessarily like a heavy single high team last year, so maybe not like a clear advantage to be had in terms of box snaps. But as far as getting a free starter for 2023 who should still get plenty of opportunities to be productive, Adams is a great bet. Seemingly better than the former Jet, Jamal Adams, at least right now, who continues to not be healthy.
Yeah, how are we going to see Jordan? We're going to wind up seeing Jordan Brooks, who tore up his knee in week 17 last year.
Yeah.
Back on the field before Jamal Adams, who hurt his quad in week 2?
I know.
I think it was.
Yeah. Yeah. It's unbelievable. I don't know what is going on with that guy, but he needs a new rehab routine. That's for sure, because he's just not healing the way that most of these NFL players seem to be healing. Right. So it's a little bit frustrating. That's for sure. So hopefully most people have moved on from Jamal Adams and aren't investing too heavily into him this season, but hey, he's still a good IDP when he's on the field. He's just not on the field that often. All right, let's do one last safety here. So I went with Julian Blackmon of the Indianapolis Colts. So this is another guy that is very, very cheap in drafts. Not as much free anymore since that preseason usage has come out, but he's also not been much of an IDP contributor for most of his NFL career. But I think that the big role change for 2023 is going to change that. He's the guy that's expected to step into Gus Bradley's defense as the strong safety now, which is going to allow him to play closer to the line of scrimmage on the majority of his snaps. And we saw that in the preseason. He played a ridiculous 74% of his snaps in the box alone in that final preseason game. So if Blackmon ends up even with like a typical tackle efficiency, like correlating to those high percentage of box snaps at 10.8%, then he could very well outperform his current ADP by like a really wide margin. He posted 4 tackles on those 35 snaps. So he did hit that high end 11.4% tackle efficiency that is rare for a safety. So if that's what we're going to get on a larger sample size all season long, then that's going to create tackle numbers for the position. And he's someone that you can still get for almost free in a lot of leagues right now. So another guy that I love to scoop up here late in 2023 drafts is Julian Blackmon.
No, I love cheap safeties. I love them.
Yeah,
my teams are built around cheap safeties.
Yeah, I talked about this like this week. I did like an IDP draft strategy podcast, and just talked about like just do not draft safety until the end and save them till the final rounds along with corners. You'll be fine. Load up on those more valuable positions in drafts, and there's so many of them. Every team has at least 2 full-time starters, corner even more. So it's not worth spending up when you can get guys like this for cheap. So. I do have a couple honorable mentions at the safety position as well. So Cameron Curl was another one who I love. Kyle Duggar, Kyle Hamilton. So these guys are a little bit more expensive, that's for sure. But guys that I still really like for this season overall. Not guys that I typically end up being able to acquire because they're a little bit more expensive. Ryan Neal is the other one, and I put Nate Hobbs for the Las Vegas Raiders at cornerback as well, just to give some cornerback love in there.
I'll throw Donovan Wilson out there, if only because I think he was undervalued before he got hurt. Now he's got I believe it's a calf injury, so his week 1 status is a little bit in doubt. But I mean, if I can get him outside the top 30 defensive backs, I don't care if he misses a week or 2. Yeah. I mean, the Cowboys, J-Ron Kearse, both the Cowboys safeties are undervalued this year. And I don't understand, given the numbers that we've seen those guys put up and the number of 3 safety looks that the Cowboys are going to run, which is a lot.
Yeah.
I'll be scrolling, going to make a pick, and I'm scrolling down. Why are the Cowboys safety still? So next thing you know, I'm going off to Twitter to check and make sure that there's not an injury that I don't know about. That Wilson didn't aggravate his calf, or Kirst didn't get hit by a bus or something. And I even, like in the Buccaneers division, I drafted Kirst and Wilson. I handcuffed safeties in that draft because I figure one of the two is going to be valuable for me and is going to be starting in week 1. Well, I wanted Kevin Byard, but Nate Markham. Sure. And again, when Markham's, I can't just get sniped. When people snipe me, they have to shoot me dirty looks.
Right.
So I rub it in. So I will have my vengeance against Nate Markham and John Norton.
You heard it here.
I have a list of people that I will have vengeance against. And it keeps getting longer.
It's going to be a long list by the end of the year.
Looks like Santa's list. It's just one of those ones that just rolls out.
Well, I'm going to hope to avoid that list at least, but we'll see how things go. We got a few leagues together that should be fun this year, but this was fun. Now everybody kind of knows the players that we love. Even if you did already have an idea of who they were, since I know I've talked about mine a lot all off season long. Just some more detail into why we're in on these IDPs for 2023. If you do have any drafts with Gary and I coming up, then I'd prefer you don't use any of this information against us and just go ahead and wipe this episode from your memory to avoid Gary's hit list. And if you don't have any more drafts with us in them, then I hope you enjoyed this episode and will now consider my guys, your guys as well. So Gary, massive thank you to you for taking the time to come on the show once again to do this with me. Truly means a lot. And I always enjoy getting to talk football with you and enjoy your insight. So thank you very, very much.
No, pleasure is absolutely mine.
Appreciate it. And before you go, can you do me one last favor and please list the sites where people can find your work? Because I'm terrified that I'd missed something since I did that intro almost an hour ago.
Oh, pop quiz. Bleacher Report, The Athletic, Football Diehards, Football Guys, Fantasy Sharks, NBC Sports Edge. If you just follow me on Twitter at IDP Sharks, I'll have links. I post links to all the stuff I write in the million different places where I write it. I have a problem saying no. People say, "Hey, Gary, do you want to write something?" And I say, "Okay," especially if there's money involved, because I like money, because that keeps the electricity and the internet on so that I can write more. So it's just kind of like a hamster wheel. It's an IDP hamster wheel is what it is.
It's the circle of life over there.
There you go. Exactly.
Yeah, I love it. Yeah, definitely check out Gary's work. You could find it everywhere, and it's all quality work. So be sure to check that out and give Gary some support on those websites. So as for me, you could find me almost every day on the PFF Fantasy Podcast. I mentioned it. I just recently recorded an IDP draft strategy episode over there. So be sure to check out that as well. And if you're into offensive stuff as well, I guess you can check out the other episodes too. Thank you as always to the boys, Josh, Adam, Bobby, for having me on here in the IDP show family. This is the last episode of the year. And I always like to thank them. I'm forever grateful to get to talk IDP with you all and wouldn't be able to do it without them. So love those guys. Can't thank them enough. Huge thank you to every single guest who was kind enough to come on that I was lucky enough to have on the show this year to talk IDP with me. Josh, Adam, Bobby again, Evan Ronda, Jake Colhagen, John Glosser, Joey the Tooth, Kyle Bellyfuel, Tom Kislingberry, Jay Sabby, Dynasty Trip, Justin Varnes, Mike Woolert, and of course, Mr. Gary Davenport. And more than anything, the most important thank you goes to everyone who has listened to the show, whether it was for every minute of every episode or 1 minute for one episode. I appreciate you all. I cannot tell you enough how much it means to me that you care to listen to me at all. So thank you very much. I hope you all are ready for the season so that you can dominate your fantasy leagues this year. And I hope that I was able to help with that. You could always reach out to me at PFF_Macri on the Twitter if you have any more fantasy football questions. But aside from that, enjoy week 1. And until another time, IDPs out.